stories. My name is Sherry. This week, it's Chapter 4 of In the Wrinkle of the Old Cliff by Julia Frenz. The Soviet Union ceased to exist on New Year's Eve, 1991. The new country, called the Russian Federation, was set to embrace democracy and a market economy. The problem was that no one had any idea how to transform the world's largest country into a free market economy. And what's more, there was no historical precedent for this. What ensued was severe economic chaos. Everyday essential items were unavailable in traditional retail stores. The entire system of distributing goods around the country had disintegrated. Russia's GDP fell by 50% between 1992 and 1998. This was worse than what Americans went through during the Great Depression. Julia steps into this world like a babe in the woods. She finally meets the family she'll be living with: Nina, her mother, and Nina's 4 children. And now, without further ado, here is Chapter 4. Russian Paradise. "How much?" I said. $10, Nina said. $10, I repeated. "Yes," she said. "You said $10, I repeated. "Yes, that's what I said," said Nina. I was talking to Nina about finding work as a translator, and we both agreed that Moscow or Leningrad would be better than here. I had just asked her how much I could expect to pay for a room in an apartment in Moscow or Leningrad. She said $10. I kept repeating it. I couldn't believe it. I then told her that I was paying $200 a month for the balcony. She couldn't believe that. "How much?" cried Nina. $200, I said. $200, she repeated. "Yes," I said. $300 with food, $200 without food. She didn't know. As soon as her friend Ola arrived, she said to her, "She's paying $200 a month here, and I didn't know." Nina asked me who arranged this. "Your sister, Tanya," I said with relish. I knew she wasn't to be trusted. I had felt it in my bones at the time. "My mother is an old person and doesn't know about these things," Nina said. "Regardless, I feel as though I've been soaked, thoroughly soaked." Ola was there to help sell stuff I had brought with me for extra cash. Her husband was taking care of it, actually. I had mascara, lingerie, cassettes, stuff like that. Nina was good at selling it for me. At one point I told her, "I forget all what I've given you." "I haven't," she smiled. I had been in Russian Paradise for a few days now, where really the only attraction is the sea and the weather. This place, with all its little parks, old magnolias and lush Washingtonia robustii, imagine Los Angeles, and Phoenix palms, would be very pretty if they would only fix it up. I know, we are in the throes of a deep depression. Crisis, really. Still, I can't help but say that the crumbling infrastructure is not only an eyesore, but is a threat to life and limb. For example, there is a pedestrian wooden bridge that I cross every day in order to get to the center, or downtown, which is like a sprawling marketplace. This bridge has a terrifying hole in it. It's so big that if you accidentally stepped into it, you would sink in up to your crotch. One leg would be left dangling over the Sochi River, and the rest of your body would be stuck in the hole. Even worse would be crossing that thing at night, maybe a little tipsy, or perhaps radiating peaceful vibes, and boom, off you go. After finding out what I was paying for my balcony and no food, Nina started to feed me. For breakfast, I have boiled potatoes with butter. Nina says I should eat that to fill out more. After breakfast, I venture out across the treacherous but picturesque bridge and along the river in search of coffee, I pay 60 rubles for a coffee that is horrific. Never again, I say, and then go back for more the next day. Russians are tea people, which explains the crappy coffee. In fact, there are tea fields not far from here. For supper, we have borscht without the beef, and a salad made out of radishes, cucumbers, and barley, I think. I'm not used to eating barley, so I'm guessing it was barley. Then we have tea with maybe apricot preserves. They don't know. It was a gift from a patient. My question is, where is the beef? There's got to be some meat somewhere, isn't there? I quickly learned that there is no beef, no pork, no nothing in the way of meat, unless it is in a can, and only when those cans are available. I don't have to buy my own milk, but the stuff Anna buys is not sterilized, and it sours quickly. It is 3.2%. If you let it sit overnight, the fat chunks up, and you can eat it in the morning. I like it. They have no cream here, so it's my only source of something fatty and rich. When raw milk sours, it just turns into yogurt and is very drinkable. Although you do run the risk of getting brucellosis, salmonella, E. coli, listeria from drinking raw milk. So when I'm feeling unlucky, I buy a 1-liter carton of 2.5% Parmalat brand. It's Italian and tastes delicious. When I first got here, it was 150 rubles. In 1 month, it's gone up to 200 rubles. But I haven't seen it in the store for more than a week and a half. I am also coming to the realization that I am the skinniest I have ever been, which is not really such a good thing, since I've never been fat, and so can't afford to lose that much weight. Inflation is scary. I stood in line for a loaf of bread this morning, and it cost 92 rubles. When I first got here a month ago, a loaf of bread was 36 rubles. It's crazy. But vodka? Vodka has remained the same price, about 40 rubles. Was it during Brezhnev's reign when they sold vodka in bottles that didn't close? So you had to drink it all up in one sitting. I bought a box of matches for 10 rubles today. 10? I said to the old babushka selling matches and sunflower seeds. They were 5 rubles 2 minutes ago, I complained. She nodded slowly and said, It's a problem. I'll say it's a problem. On average, I spend 1,000 rubles a day on myself. This would include cigarettes, mineral water, coffee, and a snack. 1,000 rubles is about $1. In May, Nina was getting paid 26,000 rubles a month. Now it is June, and she gets 30,000 a month. I spend on myself what Nina gets paid per month, and she has 4 kids to feed. I met a construction worker who is paid 40,000 rubles every 2 weeks. In the Soviet Union, if you drove a bus, and this was before hyperinflation, you earned approximately 500 rubles because you were operating a complicated piece of machinery. A doctor would be paid around 120 rubles and a janitor 100 rubles. Some might argue that a human being is a complicated piece of machinery, but I suppose not to a communist. By the way, Anna set a bowl of hot kasha, or porridge, in front of me this morning. I think it was millet boiled in milk with big slabs of butter. She said, "You paid, you eat." Ha, ha, your chickens are coming home to roost, Anna. My, isn't this a change of tune? I thought it was 200 without food. Somebody got to her. I also had a hot meal of macaroni and canned meat for dinner. Nina must have said something to the old fossil. See, Nina, you do have a say in what goes on here. Nina bought me a bottle of mineral water called Narzan, and it's only 35 rubles. It's better than the Sochi mineral water I've been buying. I am living not far from 3 cities in the Caucasus famous for their mineral water spas. One of them is even called Mineral Waters. Another one, Kislovodsk, or sour water, is where Narzan mineral water is bottled and sold all over Russia. The name comes from Nart Sane, which in the Caucasian Kabardian language means drink of the giants. Narts were mythical heroes. They were fighters who were not afraid to come up against giants. They were legendary lionhearts that these ancient people, these tribes living in the North Caucasus, like the Chechens and Ossetians, for example, sang about and told stories about on down through the ages. Unlike Europe, where war is common and territory changes hands over and over again, the Caucasus Mountains never changed. No one ever took their ancient mountain home away from them. No one, that is, until they came up against a giant that they could not defeat. The mountain men fought to keep their home. Russia fought to take it. To give you a sense of how keen Russia is for conquest, consider this Russian proverb, Kamu vaina, a kamu mats rodna. For some, it's war. For others, it's mother's milk. Although, no matter how hard they tried, the Soviets were unable to crush another mountain country called Afghanistan, even after 10 long years of war that killed up to 3 million civilians and sent many more millions looking for refuge. It was Soviet policy to kill as many civilians as possible in order to reduce support for and thus weaken their enemy, the Mujahideen. Nina says that people in Siberia make good money. Some make 300,000 rubles a month. There are also those who get paid in dollars. They might work for a foreign company or for the underground economy, but even they complain that though they make good money, the infrastructure is deplorable. You might be able to find any product you want, but the services aren't there. You could live in a beautiful apartment with all the conveniences, and then what happens if you don't get hot water for a month, or the electricity fails? You are miserable. Russian men look quite a bit older than they are. It's all that drinking, I'd say. Russian women aren't bad. They have terrible taste in clothes, though. They wear new fancy things in the middle of the day, like a long black velvet skirt with a gold belt and a gaudy blouse or something. It's like evening wear at noon. It looks horrible, and they don't coordinate their colors. Russian TV sucks. Occasionally they have a really stupid American movie that I've never heard of. I never realized how many B movies are made that we never see or even hear about. So this is where they go to die. I'm talking about TV here, not movies at the theater. There are some excellent Russian movies. White Son of the Desert from 1970 is an adventure story and filmed on the western shore of the Caspian Sea, on the territory of Dagestan. The photography is gorgeous. Anything directed by Leonid Gaidai, who made comedies, is good. And Gentlemen of Fortune, a crime comedy drama from 1971, is a must-see. And Dersu Uzala, whose main character said, "The wild boar is also a man, only the shirt is different." And "Don't discard the remnants of a carcass, leave it for the other people," he said. What other people? The bear will come, the fox will come, the wolverine will come. This movie also has a stirring theme song. They have a soap here from Mexico called Maria that everybody watches. Oh God, did I miss Maria today? Nina couldn't believe that I'd never heard of it. And it's really bad, too. I watch it because it helps me learn Russian. Just recently I learned the phrase, "I also have pride." That stuck with me. The tobacco companies are running TV ads here all the time. Camel and Marlboro especially. It's really weird. I can't remember the last time I saw a cigarette commercial on TV, if ever. American televangelists are here too. They have offices in Moscow where you can send your money simply by dialing the number on the screen. A lot of Herbalife ads, and Mars bars is big. A lot of men wear baseball caps that say USA, or T-shirts with the American flag on the front, or T-shirts with something in English written on them. Does this mean they want to be part of the West and disdain Soviet values? Or is it just that all this stuff has glutted the market and that's all there is to buy? T-shirts with Chanel written on them are popular. Nina gave me a pink one. In the evenings, I work on my translations in a book that I brought with me. I translate from English into Russian, and Nina corrects it. She never says anything. She just corrects it and hands it back to me. No encouragement, no criticism, no verbal comments. Thanks a lot, Nina. I could use some feedback from you. But that's Nina. She lives in the real world, and she doesn't pussyfoot around. One night, I was reading a children's book to the kids and came across the word USSR. Yasha said, "The USSR has disappeared." I asked, "And what do they call it now?" "Shit," said Misha. An interesting take from young Misha. Did one of his parents help him out with that one? I said, "Well, Russia is still here, right?" Yasha shouted, "Russia has also disappeared." Then Misha answered with slightly more finesse, "No, Russia is still here. Only the USSR has disappeared." Misha and Yasha are 12. They are twins. Yasha, diminutive for Jacob, is the oldest. They look nothing alike. Are they really twins? Kolya is 10 and little Emma is 5. They are Nina's kids. It's amazing how different they look from one another. I'm not casting aspersions, although Emma is from a different father than the boys. Nina's plan was to have a fourth kid so she would be eligible for a larger apartment. She had already split from her husband and then had a torrid affair with some handsome Armenian. Et voilà, Emachka. Unfortunately, the Soviet Union was falling apart at the time, and Nina did not get the larger apartment. So she remained stuck in a 2-bedroom unit with her mother and father and 4 kids. The father died just a year before I came along. In the Soviet Union, you were given housing according to your usefulness to society. For example, a worker in a sewing factory would live in a huge dormitory, the size of a football field, with 2 or 3 floors. They would share a bathroom with 3 or 4 other families, and one floor would share a kitchen at the end of a long hallway. Bathrooms were also shared at the end of the hall. If you were a junior assistant to someone in the scientific field or an assistant to anyone in the professional category, you would get 3 square meters in a communal flat, meaning your own room with a door in an apartment building. You would still share the kitchen and bathroom. If you were a doctor or a professor, you merited 9 or 10 square meters in your own apartment with your own toilet and kitchen. Housing was dependent on your social value and determined by the government. Or, it being a foot-to-the-throat police state, you could snitch on one of your neighbors or even family member and get a bigger apartment that way. The police would show up, take them away, and presto, you move into the bigger, nicer apartment or room. I showed someone my house back home, and they asked me how many families lived there. There are no houses here because no one owns private property, except the communist elite do have magnificent dachas in the old pine forests or on the Soviet sea coasts. As regards Yasha, he is a creepy little guy. Whenever I encounter him, he fixes me with this malevolent stare and doesn't take his eyes off me. What's with him? We barely ever talk to each other, so I don't understand what I could have done to make him hate me so much. He seethes with brazen hostility. I'm afraid he's going to steal onto my balcony and physically attack me one of these nights while I sleep. Even if I smile and try to appear friendly, he continues to level the same sullen look at me. Whatever is going on with that boy, I just hope I make it out of this apartment alive and not permanently scarred. Nina took me to the hospital where she works. She is a doctor. Fluorescent light fixtures are actually hanging from the ceiling. The elevators don't work, the lights don't work in the restrooms, and there is no running water at all. not even cold water. How can you run a hospital like that? As a matter of fact, we just got hot water back in this apartment building where we live after 1 month. I've been taking cold showers for weeks. There is another hazard, and this one is not limited to Russia alone. Unlike in the civilized world, where people see the difference between a human being and a 3,000-pound chunk of moving metal, the pedestrian does not have the right of way here. The sooner you realize that, the better off you'll be. I learned that pretty quickly. Do I want to end up at Nina's hospital? Misha and I are going to get bread at the bread store, and then Anna is taking me up to her dacha in the mountains. You would normally call this kind of store a bakery, but when there are only 2 kinds of bread, black and white, again with the black and white, available, I call it a bread store. The black bread is rye bread, and it is the cheapest. There is only one other product for sale here, and it's called pryaniki. What's that? I'll tell you. It's what I lived on for months until I moved up to St. Petersburg and began eating ponchiki, or donuts. Pryaniki are hard ginger things like large, heavy cookies. If you're hungry, they fill you up. Nina and Anna both insist that I take a Russian name. All right, I suppose they want me to blend in. I agree. Good plan. I chose Larisa, or Lara, Julie Christie's character from Dr. Zhivago, the stunningly gorgeous, albeit much abused and ill-fated heroine. Armed with my new identity, Anna and I set off for the dacha up in the mountains. I didn't catch the name of the particular mountain that we visited. We had to take a bus. While waiting for the bus, 2 schlop faces started to talk to me. Yes, I said schlop faces. Nina taught me this one. It's an interesting word, schlop. It says a lot in a punchy way. It describes the particular look of a person employed with or connected somehow to the KGB. It's always a man. Women don't have schlop faces. If you know what Vladimir Zhirinovsky looks like, then you'll know what I'm talking about. It's sort of a bold but vacant expression at the same time, a kind of unfocused assertiveness, curious yet careful, not hostile, but not friendly either, schloppy. And these types are sort of uniform height, weight, and hair color, which is what I call Russian blonde. It's a dull, dirty blonde, like someone was trying to color your hair blonde, but ran out of dye. The men asked who I was. Now let's just pause right here. Would you ask 2 strangers at a bus stop who they are? No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't have the guts or the inclination to be so impolite, I hope, as to intrude on a person's privacy. But they did. Why? Why were they so arrogant? And why did they want to know? What gives them the power to casually ask anyone they choose anything they want? Maybe because they belong to the privileged, powerful class, the KGB, who, by the way, were hated. Some have said that every second citizen in the USSR had some kind of connection to the KGB. They either outright worked for them or informed for them. But this ain't Anna's first rodeo. She didn't make it through the forests of Ukraine during World War II, hiding from pogroms and Nazis, by being stupid and scared. She would have just turned 16 when Germany invaded Poland. September 1st, 1939. What an ill-fated time and place to be alive and be Jewish. That whole area of Ukraine, Eastern Poland, and Belarus was ground zero for Jews. If you could survive mobile gas chambers and thousands being shot per day, like the massacre at Babi Yar, where 33,771 Jews were shot in just 2 days, and the Rumbula massacre, 25,000 Jews shot in again just 2 days, if you could get through that, you could survive pretty much just about anything. But anti-Semitism existed in Russia before, during, and after World War II. And let's not forget Stalin's purges. He was an anti-Semite who went after Jews and the intelligentsia, who were mostly Jewish people. Being Jewish was considered an ethnicity in the USSR, not a religion. And if you were Jewish, this was stamped in your internal passport. Anna, my wizened bulwark, turned to them, squared her shoulders, raised her head, and said, "My daughter," as if someone were about to argue with that. When the bus came, she said, "Come along, Larissa." "Da, Mama," I answered quietly, with head bowed. We entered the middle of the long accordion bus and muscled our way to the very back, with our backs pressed to the glass at the back of the packed bus. Anna took my money for the fare, 100 rubles, and handed it to a person in front of us. There goes my money, I thought. About 10 minutes later, someone handed me my change of 60 rubles. I was impressed. The few hours we spent in the mountains was the first time I wasn't breathing polluted air. The air smelled so fresh, and I immediately felt more relaxed. I didn't feel so tired. Ever since arriving here, I have been really fatigued. This could be the air, but it could also be the daily stress of listening to and trying to converse in Russian. For an English-speaking person to constantly have to come up with the correct case endings for words because of the 6 cases, nominative, accusative, dative, genitive, instrumental, and locative, is a lot. Because we don't have cases, the only case we really have, in English, is the possessive case. And now I sound like a basket case. You might be thinking, well, she says she has a degree in Russian, so shouldn't she know all this? Yeah, right. There is a big difference between passive and active knowledge of a language. I can sit and write grammatically correct Russian with the help of a dictionary, but to actively engage a native speaker in conversation, especially if they use slang, have an accent, or talk rapid-fire Nina, is a horse of an entirely different color. And it is exhausting. Granted, it does get easier as the days go by, but the initial contact is a shattered mess. Anna's dacha, and I use the word loosely, was the size of a garden shed. In fact, it was a garden shed. She had 1 chair, 1 stool, a small table, and a shelf. There was a small vegetable patch that she was tending up here. I didn't see anyone else or any other garden sheds around. We dug up some radishes and potatoes, a little parsley and dill, then made our way back down to the bus stop. Anna earned this dacha by working at the Lenin Sanatorium for 32 years. Before you start thinking hospital for the mentally insane, like I did, let me relieve you of that thought by saying that it is a health resort spa-type place. She has been retired for 15 years now. The first sanatorium opened in Sochi on June 14, 1909. It was called the Kavkaz River. However, the whole area in and around Sochi was a swamp-infested hell on earth, with mosquitoes and other vermin noxious to mankind. In fact, malaria was so rampant in this area that building more health resorts was seriously questioned. What were they thinking? They did, however, forge ahead and dry up the swamps. Eucalyptus trees were planted which require a lot of water, and the introduction of mosquito fish, Gambusia affinis, helped a lot. They ate the mosquito larvae. By the mid-1930s, malaria cases were 6 times less than at the turn of the century, although the disease was not completely wiped out until 1956. There is even a monument to the Gambusia affinis in Adler, Russia, on the border with Georgia. During World War II, Sochi was used as a hospital for the wounded coming back from the Eastern Front. Approximately 500,000 soldiers were treated at the 111 hospitals in Sochi at the time. By the 1960s, about 500,000 people visited Sochi every year. When I arrived in Sochi during the early 90s, the number of tourists had dropped to its lowest point in the city's history. there were approximately 200,000 visitors from other parts of the USSR that year, compared with 1,500,000 by the year 2000. So I stood out like a sore thumb, due to the paucity of tourism and due to my clothes, my demeanor, even the expression on my face. I am used to smiling when I say thank you or please. In fact, I generally do smile at people during the course of social interaction at the store or post office or wherever. Russians do not. They never smile while conducting business in a store or cafe. Not only do they not smile, they sometimes go out of their way to treat the customer like crap and call them names. And if you do smile, they might think that you're up to something, and you will cause an already distrustful person to ramp up their suspicions, and then you'll really make enemies. After a while, I gave up and saved my smiles for people who could appreciate them. Do not waste smiles on the ungrateful. Do not cast pearls before swine. Although I wouldn't smile either if I had to live in a place like that. To be fair, it's not their fault. They have no idea what a consumer economy is. They have never heard the customer is always right. Come to think of it, I haven't heard that lately either. They are paid a pittance for their labor and only move up the collective ladder by joining the Communist Party. In addition, nobody owns anything. In the USSR, there was no private property. You didn't even own the apartment you lived in. If you wanted to, quote, sell it, unquote, you swapped it for another apartment somewhere else. No money exchanged hands. Anna said there was thunder and lightning last night and strong rain, but I didn't hear a thing. She was surprised. Last night, I dreamed that Anna came into my room and folded all my clothes nice and neat. I hope you enjoyed Chapter 4 of In the Wrinkle of the Old Cliff by Julia Frenz. May you always find a good book to read, and may all your stories end well. Thanks for listening.